What are some long-held beliefs in your industry that you believe are wrong, that you would like to get people to stop believing? You don't call out things that you think are wrong that have nothing to do with what you teach. Like, that's not the point. The point of it is calling out the things that you believe are wrong about conventional wisdom that relate to your big idea. Welcome to the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast, where being a badass has less to do with what you wear and what music you listen to, and everything to do with whether you've got the thriving online business of your dreams. I'm your renegade thinking Harvard Law grad turned online entrepreneur host, Bobby Klink. In my years building my thriving business, the most important lesson I've learned is that being a badass online marketer isn't about secret strategies or ninja tactics. It's about doing the basic stuff right and showing the F up. So each week here on the show, you'll get clear, easy to execute guidance on how to build your online business and a swift kick in the ass or two to make sure you're getting it done. Hey there, welcome to episode 166 of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. I'm your host, Bobby Klink, and I'm excited for today's show because this is a Tuesday episode where, candidly, I'm going to give you one of those swift kicks in the ass you need because we're going to be talking about something really important today. And it's something that a lot of entrepreneurs are not doing right. And I think it is kind of stopping them. And what we're going to be talking about is that if you really want a truly wildly successful business where you don't have to constantly fight to find new leads, to get people in your system, to get people to buy from you, etc. If you don't want to have that anymore, you need to be a freaking leader. And that is something that I'm going to explain to you today. And I'm going to kind of try to help you get how this concept of being a leader, it's not new. It's something that's been around for a while. It's in some of the classic kind of marketing books and the kind of the new wave of marketing books. And I want to talk about it, but what I want to do is explain how this is the key in so many different areas. And it's going to put a lot of the pieces together. So that's what we're going to be talking about in today's episode. That's what we're covering. I'm excited about it because, like I said, I get to kind of give you one of those swift kicks in the ass at the same time that I'm really going to give you an executable type of episode where you can go in and get some work done and really kind of make progress. So that's what we have in store. But before I dive in, have you heard that I'm going to be holding a virtual live event, Badass Online Marketing Live, later this year in the fall? Well, I am. It's going to be 3 days of really digging in to how to build the business of your dreams, how to make selling effortless so you can kind of just have a process in place where you have every step of your system set up and ready to go. Now, I'm not going to tell you that I'm going to kind of give you a magic wand and just, do it for you. But I'm going to give you the pieces to really do it yourself and to figure it out so that you can stop struggling and start really making progress. So that's what we've got in store. Bomb Live, it is going to be a ton of fun. Now, the card is not open yet, but we have a wait list open, and I would love for you to go join the wait list because here's the thing. The people on the wait list, maybe you're going to hear about it first. Maybe you're going to get some special kind of, bonuses when and if we open the cart. So if you think you might want to join me for 3 days of online marketing fun, where you get a little bit of my attitude and a little bit of, tactical advice and community and all those things, head over to bobbyklink.com/bomb live. Again, BOMLIVE. So Bomb Live, head over there and you can get on the wait list, and then you'll hear about it as soon as we open the doors for our early bird special. So with that, I want to dive into this concept that if you want to have a wildly successful business that doesn't have that you don't have to struggle, that you don't have to fight, where selling isn't hard, where it's effortless. And by the way, you might be hearing I'm using that word again, and it kind of relates to what we're going to talk about a lot in the coming months and in my live event, you've got to be a leader. And I want to start this kind of episode by telling you why it is that I'm doing this episode. As I'm recording this, I just wrapped up. It was a virtual retreat with the mastermind I'm in with James Wedmore. And we were going deep on a lot of different things. And one of the questions he asked us is, what is the most important, the most valuable role you're playing in your business? And I had thought about that because I've been thinking about how my role is evolving as I'm building out my team, as I am becoming kind of a true CEO, running this business and doing all the things. And I'd been thinking about it. And luckily, ding, 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 Bobby got it right. I put being a leader and leadership as what I believed my most important role was. And again, because it was, virtual, there was in Zoom and obviously we were chatting back and forth, but James came in and said, that is the most valuable role any of us can serve in our business, being a leader. And when you hear that, you're probably thinking, oh, being a leader of your team. And being a leader of your team is important. But when I use the term leadership, and I believe when James was talking about leadership, it's not just about your team. It's about your team. It's about your community. It's about your customers. It's about everyone in your environment, everyone you're interacting with. That's the beauty of focusing on leadership, is that if you focus on leadership as a concept and as kind of one of your North Stars, you don't have to context shift. Because what you're doing with your team, what you're doing with your audience, what you're doing with your buyers, all of that is the same. And so you're not having to put on different hats and different personas and different things like that because you're just being a freaking leader. And so I want to stress to you that in a lot of ways, focusing on this from the beginning, maybe before you have a team, is hugely beneficial because it prepares you for the leadership role you will have later when you do have a team. And now I want to kind of dive into what this means to be a leader, because you might be saying, okay, Bobby, I get leading a team, but what does it mean in the context of my community, of my customers, of things like that? And for that, this is where I want to go back to, like I said, one of kind of the classic books from kind of the new wave of marketing. And I don't know what to call it, but my point is not the academic marketing. I'm talking about Seth Godin's Tribes. That was a really amazing book because what he laid out is that ultimately there are tribes of people and that you should be wanting to build that. And, in his mind, these are kind of movements, not businesses. And maybe you hear that and say, whoa, do I really want to lead a movement? Well, what I'm going to tell you is if you're leading a movement, things get a lot easier. And I know that's going to sound crazy, but I'm going to talk about it a little bit deeper in a second. But first, I want to step back and talk about what does it mean to kind of be leading a movement. It means that kind of there's three central pieces that are all connected. You, your audience, and a central idea. It can be more than one, but an idea, an ethos, a belief, something that is motivating beyond simply doing business or, if you teach needlepoint stitching. It is something beyond that. It's something more than that. And this, I think, is where a lot of people have trouble. And I think when we talk about things like niching, if you've heard of finding a blue ocean instead of a red ocean, if you hear about your USP or unique selling proposition, if you hear all of those things, now there are ways you could do those, and I'm going to talk about it in a second, but realistically, when you have a central motivating idea, that's not something you simply copied from someone else, but a central motivating idea behind your business, behind what you teach, behind why you're doing what you're doing, and how it fits in, all that other stuff takes care of itself. If you have this central concept of what motivates you, of your why, of what it is that you're trying to do and achieve, things get easier. And what I mean by that is this: you can create a business without a central idea. I mean, you could create a business teaching people Instagram, for example, and I just picked that out of a hat. But if there's not something that's different or unique about how you teach Instagram, what you believe about Instagram, about how you are suggesting that people use Instagram, if there's not something that is unique, that is different, that sets you apart, you're constantly going to be on that treadmill of dealing with competition, of dealing with people who are, coming up and they're going to teach the same thing as you. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I simply want you to understand that if you don't have that central motivating idea, you're always going to be in that battle with competition. When you lead, on the other hand, when you have that central motivating idea that is different, that sets you apart, you don't have competition. There is no one out there that is going to be doing it the way you are. And if they try to copy you, people are going to see them as copies of you. And so it doesn't, when you do that, you don't have to deal with the competition. You're no longer a commodity. So you ultimately need to have a central motivating idea for your business, for whatever it is you teach, for whatever it is you help people with, that sets you apart. Now, this is where I want to kind of talk for a second about niching and unique selling proposition and all those things. Well, and niching specifically, like one way that you could be leading a movement is if you are bringing a skill set to a specific niche that hasn't used it yet. So I'm going to use this teaching Instagram example that I started before, because why not use one that's consistent? Well, if you're teaching Instagram like to online entrepreneurs, unless you got something very different about what you teach, it's hard to do. But what if you taught Instagram to people, like to a market where you didn't yet? People weren't yet doing that. People weren't really using it in that space. And that then is a place where all of a sudden you are introducing this new skill set and you're saying to this new niche, this is something you can use. This is something you can do. This is how you can use this existing kind of product and knowledge base, but I'm going to teach you specific to yours. So you could do that. You could be the Instagram, teacher for, micro businesses, for example. And again, I just picked that as an example. I don't know if that is one where you would be kind of entering, but I use it to illustrate the point. That's one way to do it, through niching. Now, if you're going to be entering a market, and this is where, like I said, the blue ocean and red ocean, and if you don't get this concept, blue ocean is a concept where there are no other sharks, there's nothing people, there's not a lot of competition. Red ocean, there's a lot of other people competing, so there's a lot of other things that you're competing with the same people, etc. When you're in that space, you got to have something that sets you apart. So again, using the teaching Instagram example, if you are teaching Instagram to online entrepreneurs, you damn well better have something special, different about your approach, about what you believe, about how you teach them to use it, about how you position what it is that you are going to give them. Because if you don't, why are they going to buy from you instead of the established people who are already teaching that exact same thing to the exact same people? Now, maybe they'll resonate with you as a person, maybe they'll do that. But the problem is, if you don't actually stand for something, they're not going to feel a need to go with you, and it's going to be very hard for you to get your foot in the door. And I did an episode recently where I talked about the different levels of market sophistication and how you have to have different messaging based on that. This is where all of this kind of comes together. If you're entering a market where there are a lot of people already teaching the skill you teach or offering the service you have to the same set of people, you have to be very sophisticated in how you market. But the problem is you can only market so much. I mean, if you're teaching the exact same thing as other people, well, in exactly the same way with nothing distinguishing you, I don't want to say there's nothing that marketing can do, but even getting fancy marketing and creating a framework and creating like identity-based marketing isn't going to save you, because people will kind of see through it and say, well, this isn't really anything different. So creating a framework for something that everybody is already teaching isn't going to help you. That's just slapping lipstick on a pig, candidly. What the market sophistication, and go back and listen to that episode. I don't have the episode number off the top of my head, but we will drop a link in the show notes. It's a relatively recent episode within the last 5 or 6 episodes. What you need to understand is that creating a framework requires you to actually be doing something differently, to be teaching people to do something differently. Because otherwise, there's nothing different. And so I want you to get that concept. This is why I'm telling you, you've got to be a leader. And the reason why I had to do this episode is because I see this so often where people simply try to copy what someone else has done. That's never going to work. Now, again, maybe you can have a middling business where you're constantly going to be chasing. And guess what? If you could copy them, someone else could copy them too. And so you're always going to be fighting. So you don't want to do that. But now I want to talk briefly about how it is that you actually go about doing this. How, do you find this differentiator? And one of the things I wanted to suggest is, in some sense, part of this is what I would call more cowbell 2.0. Now, if you've listened to me talk for any length of time, if you're one of my long-term listeners, you've heard me talk about the more cowbell concept. And when I originally described it, it was largely talking about adding your personality to your brand. And as I've been thinking about it over the last couple of weeks, I realized, and I shouldn't say weeks, last couple of months, that's only part of it. Your personality definitely is part of it. And that means, like, if you brew beer or love beer like I do, you talk about beer and you talk about those things. That means, if you're a former punk rocker, you don't wear suits to try to fit in. You let people in on those parts of your life. But it's something deeper. It means you share, what do you believe? What do you believe about the particular area that you're teaching? And again, I'm not suggesting that you want to get political unless getting into politics matters for your brand. What I'm suggesting is that I'm hoping that you have central core beliefs about whatever it is you do. We have core beliefs, core values about business. The things I believe that are true about building business, especially building an online business. These are things that I believe to my core, and I share them. And again, some people don't like it, right? Some people don't like my particular brand of, business, and that's okay. Part of what More Cowbell is about is it's about attracting the people who want to be led by you, by someone who has your particular traits, your particular sets of beliefs, of ideas. And it's also about, recognizing what you stand for and being transparent about the things you stand for and being willing to do that. And I get that this, and again, I'm not talking necessarily about politics here, but I get that this can be scary because taking a stand, whether it's on politics, but also about like things happening in the market, in your industry, can be scary. It can be scary because you're like, well, but what if that means people don't like me and people stop following me and people don't want to do business with me? It's going to mean that. I'm going to give you the hard truth right now. It's going to mean that. But here's the thing. For every person who doesn't do business with you because of the things you stand for, the people who actually believe the same things as you will be drawn to you even closer. And they will not be like fair weather fans. They will be people who are your ride or die. The people who are your brand promoters, who love everything you do, your true fans. They are going to be the people who kind of are with you through thick and thin. And having a smaller group of fans who are with you through thick and thin is way more valuable than having a bigger group of people who are like, this person's okay. You know, I'll buy from them if their stuff happens to be the cheapest and it happens to hit me at the right moment. But I don't really have a strong inclination to buy. And I want you to understand, most people are cultivating the second thing. When you kind of help your audience to see what you believe, what you stand for, how you're different, how your approach is different, how your viewpoint on whatever it is that you're helping them with is different. And I'm not talking about BS, platitude, unique selling proposition crap here. And sorry to use that language, but I mean it. Because I hear so many people talk about, well, our unique selling proposition is, and you know what it is to me? We have great customer service. And it's stuff that it's like platitudes. It's like, well, that's not unique. Everybody has that. So you're saying, okay, your customer service is a little bit better. But I mean, come on. That is not for a personal brand. That is not a unique selling proposition. Now, if you're a big company, having great customer service is something that sets you apart. But if you're listening to this podcast, I'm guessing that you're not Comcast. You're not Verizon. You are a personal brand. People will simply expect there to be good customer service. People will simply expect some of the things that a lot of people talk about as their platitudes, like excellence. Oh, yeah. Okay, I don't want to be excellent. Yeah. No, of course, everybody wants to be excellent. So I want you to understand that the unique selling proposition and thinking through your unique characteristics and the way most people do it is BS. It's as dumb as the stupid ICA work that most people do because it's surface level crap that doesn't matter. What will actually matter is if you actually have things that are different about what you believe, about what you stand for, about how you approach the problem that you help people with. That is the secret sauce. That is how you become a leader because that's how you're just different. And by the way, what I want to be clear on is this is how you become a leader, a thought leader, without just being a polarizing jackass. Let's be honest, some of the people are out there they just seem like they're being polarizing for the sake of being polarizing. Just because it's like, I want to be difficult. Well, I don't know about you, but I don't really want to do business with someone who's just being difficult for the sake of being difficult. Now, if they're being kind of a smart aleck, that's okay. I do that. But I'm saying there are some people who you just see, it just, they rub you the wrong way because it's like they just are being polarizing for the sake of being polarizing. And that's where I think my problem has been with a lot of this is people are trying to be polarizing. And I say, don't try to be polarizing. Be yourself. Find what is unique about you. Find what is different about your approach. Find what is different about what you believe, what you stand for, etc. And let the world know that. And let them know your personality, because quite honestly, there's a good chance that how you're different will be related to your personality. For example, there is one person who's in my community named Mackenzie. She has a business called Running with Bacon. Now, I'm just saying, like, some might look at that and say, oh, well, that's a cute marketing. It's not. It's something she believes in. Like, you should run, but also enjoy bacon. And it's this funny thing that, like, in my mind, I automatically think of her and think of that brand because it is so, like, it's not polarizing of, like, trying to be polarizing. It's just like, hey, here's what I stand for. Here's what I believe. And it's kind of different than what most people are going to be telling you if you're talking about, like, fitness coaches or whatever. So you can kind of see how it naturally happens when you're just being you. If you find that thing that is different, if you find that central idea that you stand for. So that's kind of how I wanted to talk about this more cowbell concept and get you to understand this. But another thing I wanted to talk about it because it's related to this. You may have heard the concept of a thought reversal video. This is a concept that is done in marketing where, again, it's kind of like a polarizing piece. It's like where you take a stand and you do it kind of in a sense to polarize your audience, so people who believe you and want to, like, believe in your concept come with you, etc. But it's also about shifting beliefs. But when I think about thought reversals, I got to digress here and tell a little story, and I hope you'll get where this is coming from. The year after I graduated from law school, I had the opportunity to work for a federal court of appeals judge in Little Rock, Arkansas. So I was clerking, and there's a law school there, the University of Arkansas at Little Rock. And I don't even know where I heard this. I guess I heard it from someone who had the position the year before me, or one of the positions. There were 3 law clerks like I was working for the judge. And one of the people who'd had that position the year before had been teaching a seminar at the law school. And so I was like, oh, that's cool. So I got a job teaching a seminar. I think it was on constitutional law of all things. I don't remember exactly at this point. But I remember when I was kind of teaching it was kind of weird because I went straight from college to law school. I had graduated college in 3 years. So I was a pretty young kid. So I was probably younger than most of my students. But I will remember this thing that happened very early on. We were kind of talking about a legal concept. And I asked him, I said, well, do you think the judges got that right? And they looked at me with this, like, every one of my students looked at me with this, like, these looks of complete disbelief. Like, wait a minute, you're saying I can question a judge? And I was like, yeah, you can. You should. And I'm not saying any judge on any particular thing. I'm simply saying that I had been raised like where I was. And again, we weren't even talking about, like, the really controversial things like that you might maybe are thinking of, but we were talking about something, and the concept that maybe you could question whether a judge got it right was foreign. Whereas to me, that was just natural. Now, one of my friends and a person in my mastermind that I lead, who is a Gallup Strengths Finders test, would tell you part of that is because I have self-assurance, I believe is the strength, but it's basically I have a lot of confidence. That's one of my primary strengths. And so it's something that comes naturally for me. But this is why I give you that background to help you understand when I hear people talk about thought reversal videos, I'm like, wait, I have to have a structure for that? And what I mean by that is I'm pretty much constantly doing thought reversals. Now, maybe I'm not doing it in the refined way of being very careful with my messaging and using, like, what are called sleight of mouth, which are different ways to kind of, like, not convince people, but get people to look at things from a different perspective. I do one of them very well. It's called analogies. Analogies, a lot of people, Kitty Bowman says I am the king of analogies because I talk in analogies. I'm constantly seeing connections and making those types of things. And so I do that a lot. But my point is simply that I am constantly talking about the conventional wisdom of online marketing and how I believe it is wrong. Now, I'm wearing a shirt right now that those of you who have joined me for my live episodes have seen me wear before that says Guru Rant. My Guru Rants are effectively me being a leader. They are me taking a stand and saying where I see things happening in the online marketing world that I believe to be wrong. And part of what I'm doing is simply, like, you could say part of it is like just polarizing. And I don't mean that to be like, I'm trying to be polarizing. I mean, I set that out so that if people don't want to follow me, if people don't want to buy into that concept, to think the things I believe in, they know in advance. It also, though, hopefully, because I try to do it in ways where I'm actually giving you kind of, counter examples and reasons to understand why you don't have to simply believe the conventional wisdom, et cetera. That's the kind of thing that I'm doing to maybe help you or other people shift their beliefs and come to my side of the fence on this thing, on these issues. Because I'm trying to show why I believe these things to be true and why I believe the conventional wisdom to be wrong. And so I do that on a regular basis without having to think about it. But you, if that's not something you're doing on your own, you need to ask yourself this question. What are some long-held beliefs in your industry that you believe are wrong, that you would like to get people to stop believing? That you have a different approach, and again, this is the thing. This is where I want you to understand the synergy. You don't call out things that you think are wrong that have nothing to do with what you teach. Like, that's not the point. The point of it is calling out the things that you believe are wrong about conventional wisdom that relate to your big idea, that relate to how you do things differently, that relate to your central concept of what you teach and how you teach it. So again, one of the things like, and this would no longer be something that is different, but with Instagram, we're going to go back to that example of someone teaching Instagram and even teaching it to online entrepreneurs. For a long time, I think most people on Instagram were focused on the feed. Well, at some point, someone said, the feed is not where it's at. You need to focus on the stories and the DMs. And here's why. They didn't just say you have to do it. They explained why, because it was tied into a deeper held belief about the purpose of Instagram, of building connections, of doing the little things, of letting people kind of really see into your world. Again, I know friends who would say the stories on Instagram, people love watching them like create celery juice or do their bulletproof coffee in the morning. Or, one person has a little bit of affinity to Target and people love watching his Target runs. You probably know who I'm talking about with that one. And the concept of that is that there is a way, and people were teaching that and started to understand this is what Instagram should be about, not about just posting pretty pictures. And when that first came out, that was a new idea. That was a way to take a stand to say people are doing it wrong. Here's how you should do it instead, and here's why. And so that's kind of an example. And what I want you to think about is whatever it is that your area is, that you teach, et cetera, I want you to think, in my industry, what are the long-held beliefs that I think are wrong? And those things that then relate to how you do things differently and why you do things and teach things the way you do. Those are where you're going to find the fertile ground for your idea, that is your movement that you want to lead. And to help maybe make this a bit more concrete, I'm going to talk about some of the things that I believe that if you've been here for any length of time, you've heard me talk about. And maybe you've heard me talk about it directly, or maybe it's like, when you're like, oh, now I get it. One of the things is that I believe that the turn and burn model of, bringing people into a cold webinar or bringing them in cold to a launch and then they either buy or you ignore them is wrong. And you might say, well, that's not conventional wisdom, but it actually is. I mean, a lot of people in our industry, that's what they're doing. They bring people in just for launch. They don't send them emails outside of a launch period. They don't try to nurture them. And it's kind of like, well, if you don't buy from me, you're dead to me. And they don't say it that way, but it's kind of what's happening. There's not a lot of nurture. There's not a lot of kind of really trying to connect with people all the time. And I rail against that. I believe that's wrong. And again, I'm not saying you can't build a business that way. You can. There are many people in our industry who have built businesses that way and continue to make money that way. But what I'm going to tell you is I think it's the wrong approach. And I talk about that quite a bit on why I believe that's not the right way. And next week's episode, I'm going to go really deep into that, on why you don't need a big email list. You just need a deep connections with your audience. We're going to talk about that, because that's one of my core beliefs. That's one of the things I stand by, and that's part of this. But a couple of other concepts that you've probably noticed about me is that I am against the notion of any kind of one-size-fits-all approach to marketing. That's part of my guru rant. So part of the reason I rant about gurus is because there are people out there who are saying, you've got to follow my way and only my way. And I'm not saying their way is wrong, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret here. Those of us who have gotten successful, we have gotten successful by doing things our way because they fit our personality and our industry. If you have a different personality type, maybe you don't and shouldn't try to build a business like mine. And I want to give you a very simple example of that. I know people who are drained by interacting with their audience. Like interacting with people and engaging and doing all of those things is draining to them. And yet they start a membership site because they've seen other people who have membership sites. Well, I mean, I guess, look, you could build a membership site. I mean, you have to structure it in a very certain way if you want to build a membership site that doesn't involve interaction. But you want to know the most successful membership sites? It's places where the leader of the membership site gets life, gets energy from engaging with their community. You see how building that business fits with their personality. And so that's one example of the one size fits all. I mean, I talk about it in more specific ways with email marketing, how you can't I'm not going to try to give you a plug and play template because that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard when it comes to email. And I see ads for it all the time. And I'm like, yeah, you can do that. It's not going to work, but sure, you can get some plug and play. I mean, I could just give you Mad Libs if you want, but that's not going to help you. And I'll tell you why. And I talk about those things, about why that is the wrong way. But it's not just about a specific thing. It's about this, notion of a plug and play, one size fits all way to market. And I don't believe that's possible. Now, on the legal stuff, obviously I believe templates work. But when it comes to the marketing stuff, no, they don't. They just don't. Because the messaging, the connection, all of that stuff has to be specific to you. Another thing that you maybe have heard me talk about is I don't try to tell you that I'm going to, make you, a six-figure entrepreneur in 30 days or some ridiculously short period of time. I think some of the worst things that happen in our market are the people who are saying doing these whole challenges and getting multiple seven-figure and multiple seven-figure entrepreneurs say, well, how would you build a business if you were starting from scratch in 30 days? And I'm like, that is the worst idea possible because you're basically setting the wrong expectations for people that, you can build a business in 30 days. And what I'll tell you is I probably could because I could kind of, I still have all my skill set. I have all those things and I could figure out, okay, well, how am I going to put a message out there? How am I going to do all these things? But for most people, I'm just going to tell you that's not, it's not going to happen. The reason I could do that now is because I put in the last 3 to 4 years of hard frickin' work. And it's now paying off. And so I will rail against this notion of quick and easy and people telling you a quick and easy solution. And again, I simply do that. And it means I can't get as many leads in the front door. Because if I told people, hey, I'll tell you how to write an email in 5 minutes that's going to make you rich in 30 days, I bet you I can get a bunch of leads, but I can't get them that result. And so I'm not going to try to do that BS because I think it's wrong. But then another thing that you've probably heard me talk about, and this is the last one I'll talk about before, ending this episode is, I've got a shirt about this one too, but it's when I rail against this whole notion of secrets, like secret strategies or ninja tactics. And I say, that's the dumbest stuff ever. You don't need secret strategies or ninja tactics. If your business isn't working, finding some new shiny object, strategy, or tactic is not what you need to do. That's like thinking, I don't know how to cook, so I'll just go buy myself a $1,000 chef's knife and suddenly I'll be a Michelin-starred chef. Oh, by the way, that's one of those analogies we were just talking about earlier. But you get the point. And I talk about that a lot because I hear that, and it's one of the things I hear people in almost every webinar, the 3 secrets. And I'm like, they're not freaking secrets. And people don't need secrets, and people chasing secrets, in my view, I don't like it. And I understand why people do it. And even some of the people that I, know and love in the industry that I've learned a ton from do it. I just am not going to do it. And I'm not going to do it because I believe it sets this wrong expectation that, it's the secret thing that only the few know. There aren't a lot of secrets. Now, there are ways to save time. There are ways to organize things that are, very important and all of that. But it's not because they're secrets. It's because you can follow in the footsteps of someone who's already done the things who can help you avoid the mistakes. But there's not a lot of secret to building a successful business. You got to attract people to your world and convince them to buy stuff from you. It's really that simple. And I know it's crazy, but it's really that simple. And so I give you those as examples so that you can start to understand this. But at the end of the day, and this is why I'm going to come back to what we're going to be talking about next week. Because next week, I'm going to be talking about how you don't need a huge list. You don't need a huge audience. You don't need a huge anything to have a crazy successful business. And what I'm going to use is myself as the case study. I'm going to talk about the success I've had and share numbers with you and give you a sense that I built a multiple 6-figure business. And like right now, as I'm recording this episode, we are just cracking 6,000 people that we actively market to on my email list. Last year, I had maybe half that, and I had a multiple 6-figure business. And last year, I had a multiple 6-figure business while I was also running a law firm and had a case that was taking half to 3/4 of my time for much of the year. And I did that with an audience of 3,000 people. And so I'm going to talk to you about, in my view, and this goes back to that the first belief I talked about why I don't believe in turn and burn, why I believe in connection-based marketing. And if you listen to what I've talked about, my Fans First Society concept, my email marketing approach, one of the things that is the through line to all of that is that I focus on connection. I focus on nurturing, and not from the perspective of, let me nurture them to buy right away. Let me figure out how to get them to buy. And I mean, look, I've got those kinds of conversion emails and all those things. But at the end of the day, one of my things that sets me apart that I think a lot of people have looked at and said, wow, you're just different than a lot of these other marketers, because I connect with people on a deep level. And that is, I would say, in some sense, my biggest thing, my biggest idea. And so I'm preaching that from the rooftops, and I'm going to keep doing it. So I hope you'll join me again next week, where we're going to go deeper on that. I'm going to talk specifics about why you don't need a huge email list. You don't need a huge audience to have a successful business, and what you need to be doing instead. So that's what we're talking about next week. Until then, go out, enjoy building the business of your dreams. Talk to you later. That's it for this episode of the Certified Badass Online Marketing Podcast. Make sure to tune in next time. And in the meantime, go out and build the badass business of your dreams.